Yeah, again, just thank you very much for everyone for coming along. Obviously, even if you're not in the Midlands, I appreciate it. So, otherwise, I will let Matt take the virtual floor.
Cool. So, hello. Yeah, cheers for coming and listening to the words I'm about to say and things. Yeah, I'm Matt. Pronouns are he, him, and I am part of the kind of startup studio Made by Titans, amongst other stuff that I do as well. And I'm going to be talking about gender representation and bias in a cartoon world. The reasons I want to talk about this is because it was kind of an issue that we kind of stumbled on in development of our game when we really weren't expecting it. So it kind of sort of almost came out of nowhere. So I'm going to be kind of like sharing my experiences, what we did, talking about what I think issues are. Is a pretty kind of tough, heavy topic to kind of go through here, but I think it's really important to kind of talk about these things and kind of probe that thought. So hopefully there will be a little bit of discussion afterwards, and people can talk about things there. Um, yeah, cool. So yeah, thanks to the Midlands for having me. I do have a little bit of connection to the Midlands actually. I studied at DMU animation there, so I have spent some time in Leicester, and I think I went to a gig in Birmingham at the O2. So I've explored that area a little bit. Um, so yeah, so what this is really going to kind of look at is unconscious bias, and that's something that everyone has, and it's kind of unavoidable in a way. But when we're making games, it's kind of we need to be a little bit more conscious of our unconscious bias. So even though our game kind of cartoon kind of world here, which I'll show you in a little bit, the yeah, it's kind of how we kind of stumbled into this kind of with kind of gender as well. So this is the only bit of text in the entire presentation, but this is kind of like a definition I found from a source online on diversity um, here. So unconscious biases are social stereotypes about certain groups of people that individuals form outside of their own conscious awareness. Everyone holds unconscious beliefs about various social and identity groups, and these biases stem from one's tendency to organize social worlds by categorizing. Unconscious bias is far more prevalent than conscious prejudice and often incompatible with one's conscious values. Certain scenarios can activate unconscious attitudes and beliefs. For example, biases may be more prevalent when multitasking or working under time pressure. Okay, so this could potentially be where one of the issues we stumbled upon might have kind of came from and things, and I'll kind of share that with you guys. So a little bit about me first. So I'm Matt. I'm an artist and animator. I studied at DMU and then worked as an animator for Technics. Later becoming Zero Light. So I worked on games like the NASCAR the Game series. We did Warhammer Storm of Vengeance. Yeah. So an array of kind of like AAA experience there. Then had a little bit of kind of like freelance experience there, and moved into a little bit of games teaching. So teaching 16-year-olds game dev, and now I'm doing kind of a blend of education and starting up a studio working on our game there. So yeah, I do an array of things. I'm in the technical zone incubator at the moment for underrepresented groups. Yeah, which is super duper cool. So our startup studio is Made by Titans. We're a two-man team. I think Chris is in here as well. So Chris does all of the kind of game design and programming. I'm art and animation. We're kind of proper bootstrap kind of indie studio. And our first kind of title that we're working on that this talk is going to focus on is Squishy Sports. So Squishy Sports is a 2D physics-based party game where the characters are shapes and everything is squishy. Um, for the purpose of this talk as well, I do identify with LGBTQ plus as a gay man. I think that's important for kind of a few reasons. Kind of one, I'm a little bit closer to this topic as well, and it's something that I've kind of, we kind of fell into as well, and kind of discovered kind of issues with things that we were doing. So it kind of shows how everybody needs to think about this. And also, I think it's really important because with the discussion that was happening around Pride recently, I think it's kind of important to talk and recognize from a kind of a representation point of view. I remember when I kind of joined the industry, there wasn't really many people talking about this, and I certainly there wasn't anyone in the studio that I worked at that I knew that identified as LGBTQ plus. So for me, just talking about it and saying like kind of, hey, I'm here, it is really important. Like I've always been like really kind of pro equality with everything, and it's something I've not really talked about and kind of explored too much in my professional career. But I think just kind of talking and saying I think it is really really important, and something I've been kind of like exploring a lot recently. Um, Cool. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview of the game. I'm not sure how well this is going to play. I'll put the trailer in the chat later as well. But I'll give you a little bit of an overview of the game here. I've just muted it, so the audio is not important. So you can see our characters here, our shapes. We've got various different sports modes with physics-based. It's kind of family-friendly sort of fun that we've been going for. Kind of really daft, stupid, with that sort of Saturday morning cartoon art aesthetic. Yeah, we've got kind of special moves. It's all kind of sort of crazy. So yeah, we're kind of almost finished with dev on this, hoping to launch later this year, early next year. So yeah, that's our game. Oh, it's the YouTube stuff. Um, Cool. So yeah, a bit of disclaimer. As I said earlier, this talk isn't necessarily giving answers. This talk is kind of prompting kind of thought and exploration. I'm going to showcase, what we did, and how we explored that. Yes, there isn't really a right answer in this, but I think kind of the more that we talk about these type of things, the more kind of people are aware and can kind of think about things, hopefully from different angles. I might make points in this, and I'm not saying that they apply to all people as well. And yeah, I'm just going to kind of showcase things there. So I'm going to focus it around a particular kind of part of our development where we kind of encountered this. So um, our characters are shapes, and our characters have always been genderless. Okay, so none of them have one gender or the other. They are just shapes there. Um, they they're shapes because we are kind of physics based as well. So every single character feels slightly different to play with. So by default, we are kind of fairly neutral in kind of gender sense there. Cool. Yeah. So each of our characters, they have their own little kind of art, kind of personality as well. So you've got the angry triangle, you've got Square, who's a little bit kind of shy and things. You've got the character in the bottom right, which is kind of a mashup of other characters. So yeah, they've each got their own sort of little kind of personality that goes with them. Our characters also have unlockables, so skins, kind of unlocked through playing the game. So everyone will start off with the ones that are in the top left, so basic color swaps there, and you unlock more just by kind of playing the game. We're gonna have like kind of a sticker pack style system, so you'll kind of unlock more, and they'll have kind of rarities tied to them. So there's a hell of a lot of different kind of customization kind of options within the game there. Now, what I'm going to talk about centers around this particular character here. So this is our heart character. Um, as an artist and animator, I like to share stuff with people, particularly kind of friends and things. So whenever I make stuff, I'm usually kind of proud of it. I've spent a lot of time on that. I'll kind of share it with people and kind of get other people's opinions. Now, the original design for Heart was this. Okay. And I shared this with one of my friends, and they had a lot of opinions on this particular design, and we had like a really big discussion about it. Now, this is some of the animations for the Heart character here. Um, there was kind of an array of things that they were kind of picking out with why there was problems with this character in comparison to others that I hadn't considered. So I'd created a character that I thought looked really kind of cool. So the first kind of thing that was picked up was the large eyes for this character here. Okay. Second part was that this character is pink. The third is that this character is a heart, and the fourth is that this character has a bow. Now, all of those relatively kind of small design choices there combined together, creating a slightly more kind of feminine edge to this character. Okay. So this is where I'm kind of coming back to that idea of unconscious bias, because this wasn't something that was kind of actively done as such to create a kind of feminine character here. For me, it was the kind of the interest for this character. Okay. So kind of having a look at where my kind of art choices came from on this. So the eyes themselves, um, my friend had kind of said, like, kind of comparing to old kind of cartoon characters here. So kind of iconic cartoon characters and having those big kind of, um, you know, eyes there, creating like more feminine look, arguably, with that. Um, the eyes are actually a mirror of the whole design itself. So it's actually the heart just kind of shrank down there, and that kind of fills that design. So one of the other challenges we have when designing characters is that they are irregular shapes compared to normal kind of face types that we're used to. Okay. Um, Pink as well. So that was one of the other things that was picked up. Um, and again, being a slightly more kind of feminine color. And again, heart being a slightly more feminine shape, that was what was kind of put to me there. I think that's a really interesting kind of area, and that kind of stems from blue being for boys and pink being for girls, and that being quite an absurd concept in itself. Okay, so that's not something that I would believe there. I am quite favorable to pink generally. So, but this is something that's kind of in society, and will be seen. So I know Americans, gender reveal cakes and things like that. Gender reveals party, you have pink for girls, blue for boys. So that where they were kind of highlighting that issue there. Um, this is Machine Gun Kelly. I am quite a big fan of Machine Gun Kelly, but Machine Gun Kelly recently wore this outfit to the VMAs in America, and it got a lot of kind of attention from people. It got a lot of backlash from other rappers calling him out on the color that he was wearing, and yeah, so his kind of response to this was, "Are you fucking kidding me?" He's having his phone with his hands. He insinuates that people are mad and asks themselves to admit it themselves. Pink has been a color that has become socially constructed, cultural signifier gender for girls. Okay, so essentially saying that it's stupid. It's not a kind of color for girls there. And again, I'm completely of that belief there. Um, but these things together, this is our lineup of our characters now. Actually, I'm going to come back to that point. Actually, yeah, we actually have pink in other characters as well. So this isn't kind of an active choice with this character, but then coming back to that kind of point I was making of the combination of all of those things together. So our square character, if we look at maybe percentage coverage, actually probably has more than the heart there. Okay. looking at other skins that we have as well. It's a color that I'm using kind of repeatedly throughout kind of all aspects there. And again, it's not something I'm kind of deeming to be a female color there. A few more examples across other characters that we can see as well. Now, I think that the biggest problem for this was this bow, and particularly the placement of this bow, and then the other points that I'd made: the shape, the color, the big eyes, almost like accentuated that aspect of it. And this then goes to the kind of the point of what a girl thinks and what a boy thinks, and how that shouldn't be a thing at all there. However, it's quite a difficult thing for us to approach, particularly when designing things, because we're creating something that works for that one character, but then it can be looked at in isolation there. So yeah. So it's a really tricky kind of concept to give players the option for what they want to choose, but not having things stand out. So balancing that there, we're also seeing the kind of the blue and the pink kind of color palette here. I mean, that's what this image was kind of created to kind of illustrate. You know, in the past, toy shops would have been set out like this, with even items categorized for boys, categorized for girls. So this is not something I'm necessarily saying exists now, but it goes back to that concept of unconscious bias and how it's almost ingrained and kind of into people. And even if you're not actively thinking about it, that could have potentially been something in the back of my mind when I was designing that character that kind of seeped into there, and I wasn't kind of actively as aware of it. We also see this in kind of other iconic characters as well. So Minnie Mouse, Mickey Mouse, you've got them there. Minnie Mouse has a massive kind of bow on it. So you're getting that kind of gender representation there, and that's then translating through to then our character, I feel. Okay, now other characters have bows on them as well, and this was part of my thought process, that any character could have a bow. But then typically when we see male characters wearing bows, we've got a different position here. So we've got almost like the bow tie. So we're getting more of this kind of place, whereas the design that I'd originally put forward is more of this here. So what you might think of with maybe young girls, the hair clips in there. So is this a feminine item here? Is that what we're saying? And that's kind of what we were talking about. So I liked this design, but I could see the issues. And after I had this conversation with my friends, I shared it with other people, like people that I'd actually shared the design with before, and they could then totally see where it was coming from as well. So if we look at our lineup of characters here, I feel that it is starting to stand out as being a little bit more genderized there, even if it wasn't conscious. So amongst our other characters, you probably could be drawn more to that, where the other one's relatively neutral. Now, obviously, this is going to be opinion based and perception based as well, and how people perceive colors, how people perceive items as well. So I think that concept's really interesting as well, and it's where the line gets drawn. But I think with our character, with the neutrality of other ones, I think that this did kind of push it to kind of stand out a little bit further. Okay, cool. So so what we chose to do is to remove the bow, and I felt like that adds more neutrality and is more in fitting with the rest of the game. So looking between these two kind of designs, I feel the removing it added it was more in fitting with the kind of the idea and the concept of our characters, even though it's something we hadn't considered originally. Now, as an indie dev, as bootstrapping a studio, a lot of work goes into this. I'd put loads of work into that bouncing bow, and I was loving the way that it was working and reacting. So this was kind of like a really hard decision to make. And there was also the question of, is removing it, is that is that right to do? Or is it not? Is the fact that we've removed it, is the fact that we've almost censored that there, is that right? So it was a really tough call. But generally, when I kind of talked about this with people, it seemed to be that they could see where it was coming from, and we didn't want people to feel like that. We didn't want people to feel like this was a female character, because all of the shapes could be male, could be female, could be absolutely nothing there, because they are just shapes. So we felt this was the right call to do with this. So yeah, this is the kind of the final design here. You can see the color swaps that kind of everyone has from the start with that one. Now, I didn't want to get rid of the bow because I'd put loads of work into it. So I was going to make it into a skin, an option that someone could unlock and choose. And although there's not too much kind of LGBT concept in the game, I wanted to kind of add a little ode to it. So I was going to hypercharge this. I was going to have flowers, unicorns, and it's got kind of a rainbow shade to the underneath of our characters. So they've all got kind of little tongues underneath. And as identifying as LGBT, I felt kind of comfortable doing this. I talked about this with other people, and everyone was like, hell yeah, I want to play the unicorn heart surrounded in flowers. So I felt more comfortable having it as an option rather than as the default there. So a way to kind of keep that in and have it as a customization option. Okay. Now, I showed you some of the skins that we had earlier, and the kind of the concept of the skins was essentially fancy dress. Now, I remember when I was in primary school, there was you guys might have had this maybe in reception, there was the magical fancy dress box, and maybe there was an afternoon you could go, and if you finished your colouring in or whatever else you were doing, you'd be able to go and play dress up or whatever for a bit, or at least my school did. I'm from Norwich. Maybe that's a Norwich thing. I don't know. But yeah, we did, and there was like an array of waistcoats there, and there was I think there was like a few like brown ones and things like that, standard ones, and then there was one like jazzy purple one with loads of patterns, and everyone would try and like finish their work so that they could get the jazzy kind of waistcoat over everyone else. And that's kind of what we have with our skins, kind of as I showed earlier. Like each skin, each outfit has like multiple kind of colors, and then we're going to be tying kind of rarity to those. So that was kind of the concept of our skins. You can take your kind of neutral character and dress it up however you wish. And this kind of was meant to be kind of with innocence as well, and giving people the options. So if a girl was playing Circle, they could dress up in whichever one they wanted. Now, obviously, as an indie team as well, it's pretty impossible for us to give everyone every kind of customization possible within the game with the way that we were kind of designing and working. So we would try and include a range of things. Now, this is our Circle character, and one of the skin options that you can unlock for him, not him, for it is this one, which is a very kind of masculine approach here. And I think I'd already designed this one at this time, and it was a skin that I really, really liked. And again, this is coming at it from that more kind of dress up angle here. So it's the kind of the suit there. And then it made me think about this. Is this okay? Now, does this fit in? Now, again, as it being a skin, I felt it did that. It gives people, whatever gender, the ability to dress up if they wish to do that. And almost linking in with kind of drag queens, drag kings as well, which are almost a cartoonized version of genders themselves, that people choose to kind of engage with and love there. So that was kind of the sort of thought around that. But I mean, this skin's still in the game, and it's again like uh, where is the line, and are we crossing the line there? And when is it right to remove something, and when is it not? And I think it's a really kind of tough call there. With me being male, arguably my unconscious bias might have kind of forced me to create things that tended to lean more to the male spectrum of stuff there. And again, lots of people will talk about diversity in teams, and I think that's why it's so important to have a range of diversity in teams so that you're getting that experience, because that unconscious bias, as we kind of talked about, everyone will have that there. So if your team fits or is less diverse, then you might find the unconscious bias kind of seeps in different ways. And there's obviously ways to counter that as well by kind of consulting and talking with people, which is kind of arguably what I've done through this process in a very kind of indie level, and sharing with a range of people that I kind of know there. So yeah, that's there again, like I don't really have the answers with that skin there, but it is a kind of a design that I'm fond of. So some of kind of like the takeaways as well. Another kind of linking back to a point I was making earlier. Another part of unconscious bias I feel might come from just me as an artist and as an animator and loving animation. So looking at past animations that as animation pieces are strong, but then moving forward to present day will be looked at differently, but with them leaving an impact on people and people liking them, um, you know, creating art is almost leaving a little bit of history there, and then that's almost adding to your unconscious bias. Obviously Disney, biggest animation company in the world, with this kind of really iconic character. So I think, again, this is really important to think about, because the things that you create, yours could be the next Minnie Mouse. So it's almost thinking about what you're going to be leaving behind as well in the visuals that you are creating. Um, so yeah, I think it is really important. Maybe Squishy Sports is going to be there, and everyone's going to be talking about that in 100 years or whatever. I don't know. Okay, thinking about those concepts of what is a boy thing, what is a girl thing, but also making sure that players are going to have that choice to be able to choose things. Because if we're removing that choice as well, arguably is that worse there? So if a guy wants to choose the super flowery skin, or whatever, or whichever way round people want to do it, I think it's important almost having those options there, so that players can do it. But it's, I guess, how you present it to players. So with us, with that heart character skin, there is that default there. So I felt the combinations of the issues that I kind of talked about in the original design, that was default. So if you hadn't played the game, that was what you got there, rather than having that more kind of neutral aspect to that. And then kind of the biggest kind of thing within this is that unconscious bias, and thinking about being more conscious about the bias. So as I've kind of showcased in this, as we've gone through with development, nobody's going to be particularly kind of safe from this. Everybody is going to have this in the kind of the choices that they make, and more often than not, they're not going to be causing they don't have intent to harm anyone else. It's just stuff that lives there. Maybe it's things that you've seen, as I talked about with previous art and animation that's been around for years, or maybe it's kind of things that have more been kind of social constructs for a lot of time, that kind of almost need breaking down, as I kind of talked about with Machine Gun Kelly wearing pink and things. I think that what it's about, giving people the choice, and then being aware of that, maybe getting second opinions on things there, particularly if you're not sure. So like this conversation I had with this one friend, I wasn't going to leave it there, because I felt if one person felt like that, other people could feel like that, and then that wasn't my intent with that original design there. Um, yeah, so it's making it accessible. Um, Cool. So those are my thoughts. Those are my experiences kind of on this topic here. Again, this was something that we were not expecting to come across. but it is there. It is something that I think everybody should think about. Obviously, this will exist in other aspects other than gender as well. That's kind of how it kind of manifested in our kind of current project, and what we thought about whilst we were doing it. So yeah, as I said, there's no kind of right or wrong answers here, but it's kind of how we think about it, and how we choose to present the things that we have in our games, and thinking about that impact that the products that we create and the assets within them can do, and the perceptions that people potentially could have. So that's me. If anyone wants to talk further, I'd love to chat about things. But yeah, thanks for listening. I hope that was insightful. Yeah, thank you very much.
You're only going to have me clapping, I'm afraid. Awesome. Thank you very much for that. That was super interesting. Yeah, kind of very thought provoking as well, because I know for myself, as again someone that's also in the community, the LGBTQ community, and obviously someone that plays games and is actively looking for the sort of the next game to do sort of good representation for LGBTQ stuff. I think it's often kind of overlooked on the sort of these sort of topics where you're not kind of having that bias as well. So fantastic. Oh, you're getting a lot of gifts and thank yous in the chat. So, as I mentioned,
Okay.
if you have any questions or discussion points, then feel free to put them in the chat. And I can read them out for Matt. Yeah, it's
I've
definitely.
got
Sorry, on you go.
so I've got one that's more of a technical side of things, and one that's more of a question.
Yep.
So you went with the skins option for the bow tie, the bow in the hair. Did you consider the bow as a bow tie as well as a skin option?
Yeah, so we had about a week where I was playing around with things and trying to move things around, and again, being indie, not wanting to lose work that I'd kind of put in, with time being so precious. And I did try it there, and it didn't work. It felt wrong. It didn't quite fit in with the design. It felt like I was kind of shoehorning. It's like I go through I went through quite a process with kind of all of the characters, where they'll start off in a notebook with me kind of doodling, and it was about kind of, I guess, getting kind of an aesthetical balance. And I guess that's where your kind of unconscious bias can kind of creep in as well with things, because I was finding kind of shapes and things that kind of fitted together. So yeah, I tried moving it. It wasn't quite working down there. I mean, arguably, if I was going with a bow tie, we could then argue that we're just flipping it to the other end of the spectrum there, which isn't really solving the issue as such. So kind of the choice to move it to skin was that players aren't then forced, if they want to play the heart character, they aren't forced then to have that kind of bow there, which is we felt was making it stand out, even though it wasn't something that we thought about initially, sort of thing. So yeah.
So the second one is a more technical aspect of making customization systems. So
Yep.
like from what you've said there, is not wanting to lose work. That kind of answers half of it, which is quite a bit of it seems to be like animation in the art section. But from that GIF, some of it looked like it might have been programmer driven, and kind of what's the the split between squishiness that's code driven and squishiness that is art.
Yeah, it's a really nice balance in this, actually. So we use a program called Spine. The game's made in Unity as well, and Spine exports to Unity and Unreal and other things as well. Spine is a kind of a bone animation system for 2D 2D assets, and it's got my files have loads of skins in them, and they're just swapping images, and Spine will pack out an atlas, and then in game there's a spine runtime that you'll use, and you get a whole host of extra tools that let you control the spine features, including accessing the bones that exist within the animations, and the skin system there as well. So yeah, it's quite clever where it'll you might have, let's say, I think some of the characters have like 7 atlases that are attached to them, but when it's using the skins, it's only kind of using the ones that it needs there, so it's not loading them all at the same time. So yeah, you're only loading that sort of one skin in. It acts as kind of one object, but you can kind of change between them in real time. So on our character select screen, it's just swapping between them there, and yeah, that's kind of how the sort of the skin system works. So it's relatively pain free. Yeah, our balls are done like that as well. So there's various different kind of skins for the balls that you can kind of change to. Some of them have their own unique setup. So as well as regular balls, we've got things like rugby balls, and we've got Wellington boots in there as well. So some of them need their own kind of custom colliders and things. But yeah, the runtime kind of handles the skin swapping from the visual aspects, right, relatively easily, and you can tie skins to different prefabs and stuff like that.
Ah, cool. That's my questions. Yeah, thanks.
Cool.
Thank you. We've got another one that's come in, asking if they're wondering if the shapes make any sound as well, like if they talk, and if though, were there any considerations with regards to the gender dimensions of voice or sound, and was there anything else potentially gendered attributes like movement as well?
So movement is more tied to personality. I'll just pull up that slide again because that hopefully will show it a little bit more. And does this work? Can you see this one? Yeah, it looks like it's working, doesn't it?
Yeah, we can see that.
Yeah. So yeah, they're all kind of like they've got their own personalities. So we've got Goopy that's a bit silly, I guess. Not too sure what's going on. Pythagro, the triangle, is angry. Blocko, the square, is kind of unsure, which I liked, being almost a strong kind of shape, but being a bit more unsure. Hexy, that's almost more kind of baby, infantile like. Trap, that's cool. Heart was kind of happy go lucky. Egg was unhinged, and Abomagon, the last one, which is kind of we had an idea for a story, which I don't think we're going to do. There was like an evil scientist that was trying to make the best shape, and yes, it's kind of like a Frankenstein kind of almost there, so a little bit unhinged and weird as well. So yeah, the animations all really neutral and more linked to a personality that could be either gender, or because it's either gender, it's then kind of almost a mute point. It doesn't need to kind of come into the equation there, which was what we really wanted to kind of achieve with everything, like not having a gender there with them. It's, you know, and it only really kind of came up when we went through this kind of process. In terms of sound, that's kind of something that we are still exploring at the moment. We do like the idea of them each having their own kind of voices that would match the kind of the personality of the shapes as well. So it would be more tied into that rather than kind of gendered there. So we'd be trying to go for a more kind of cartoon, probably generally high pitched kind of tone. We've sort of talked about, so quite kind of modulated to try and sort of remove that kind of aspect of gender there. You have got the kind of the added problem of I guess the source that you capture would come from somewhere, so you'd need to think about that and how you do that. Yeah, yeah. yeah, so that's kind of that. Was there another part of that question I missed?
Don't think so. Just gender dimensions of voice and sound or anything like movement. So no, I think we're good. Yep.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully that helps there.
It's well again, it's one thing I've like not even kind of thought about until it's brought up. It's like, oh yeah, that's actually a very good point on kind of the gender bias towards voice and sounds and the things that kind of you put in a game as well. So
I think it almost starts to become scary because again we were quite happy going along making our game, and then when we came across this, it almost made us second guess a lot of things that we've done, and in itself that is that's tricky because it's then that idea of censorship as well, and obviously like characters out there are male and characters out there are female as well, and other parts of the kind of gender spectrum too. I think that's kind of a whole other kind of aspect as well, because those are actual characters, whereas I guess these are kind of shapes. They're not kind of as identifiable. I mean, I haven't seen any of these folks walking down the street, so I guess that's where kind of our issue kind of came in more, but also the same reason why it was unexpected as well. Because I mean, we have elements of the human world in there. Our environments kind of fit within the kind of human world, but they're very kind of cartoonized versions of them. So yeah, I think it's going to be part of that balance of like you could look at your whole game with a massive magnifying glass going at it, but I guess it's that again going back to that topic of unconscious bias and thinking about it, questioning it, talking about it, and seeing if anything stood out. Because with ours, we feel it did stand out, and it was good that we kind of found that and explored that. But then you can almost go to the other end. You can become scared to put things into your game, which was what I was trying to kind of illustrate with the circle kind of skin there. It's like, is that okay there, or could we have done it differently, or should we do it differently, or is then censoring it at all then removing that option from someone to be able to do that? It is a tricky one.
yeah, I guess it kind of like feeds into like sort of with any games, but I feel specifically with indie games is that kind of like feedback from people that are outside of your company, no matter how small you are. It's just getting that outside perspective, and again, especially when it comes down to kind of gender bias, it's how people perceive. As you like, obviously the perfect example was the bow I mentioned in the chat. I hadn't even considered like the bow tie being, it's a bow at the end of the day, but I had always kind of associated bows with being more female presenting.
Yeah, I think it
Yeah,
was the way that we'd presented it originally. I think it definitely was, and then the other parts, the other kind of problems, like kind of the big eyes, the pink, the actual heart shape itself. I think that just accentuated it a little bit. But then we didn't want to remove the option of, because the heart itself is a kind of physics kind of shape is quite interesting to play with, because it's quite different to the other ones. Like all of these characters feel quite different, so we didn't want to remove the option of someone being able to choose that if that was their favorite shape, and that person could be male, could be female, could be any part of the spectrum there. So it's that's the yeah, I think it's a hard balance. Yeah, but then with the bow being the default option, which we had originally, that's where I think I felt like the problem was lying more within.
So, from how I would imagine this, looking at what we've seen, the once you start trying to dress up characters using human clothes, you humanize them, and by doing that, you implicitly start putting a gender on them. I saw you did like a giant spreadsheet of like how the customization would go from left to right. Do you think that when you were working on that kind of sheet, that you implicitly started putting the bias on the original shape afterwards? Rather than having a shape and evolving the shape, you were going backwards from an outfit to the shape.
With the original design sort of thing.
Well, you showed like the spreadsheet where you have like your
These ones.
original outfits at the top left, and then like your ultra like cosmetics later on. Do you feel that perhaps sometimes when you are working on that sort of evolutionary cosmetic, that maybe once you started accidentally humanizing the shape with some outfit and clothing, you accidentally were then going backwards and modifying the original design slightly? Or did you already have like the original design and then you did the cosmetics? What I'm
Yeah,
trying
so
to work out is, did you do cosmetics at the same time, or was it always like
largely
evolving?
largely it came afterwards. So
Right.
we always knew we wanted to have cosmetics. Yeah, I mean, our game, it doesn't have a single player. It's all multiplayer. So this kind of adds that element of progression. We're going to have a sticker book. You're going to be able to see these in them, of kind of similar to kind of Plants vs Zombies, kind of how they had kind of sticker packs there, and we want to keep a kind of positive reward cycle. Kind of going back to how I designed characters originally, like they were really small thumbnail sketches, and we'd kind of I'd do loads. I'd maybe spend an hour just doodling with a biro, just wherever in a notebook, and then I'd share them with Chris, and we'd be like, hey, maybe this one would be more of a skin sort of thing. So we'd bank them, and then I'd come back to some of them later. So yeah, I kind of, our skins do fit more within that human world, and that's where you do get some of that. And it was something that we were kind of mindful of, and we wanted to try and include a bit of a shred and be as kind of neutral as possible, but then also have really kind of cool options as well for people. Whether we've completely nailed that or not, I think would probably be another question. But then it then comes down to our limitations as well, because then it's, we could put a bow on every single character so that everyone has the option to do it and put it and move it around, but then it then starts exponentially growing our work with, if one character has something, then do they all have to have that? And then yeah, it's definitely tricky. Yeah, and then it's then thinking about where that kind of unconscious bias is kind of creeping in and things, and it's something that we're still looking at with what we have, and still kind of gaining feedback on, so that when we release, we can release in the kind of best way possible, I guess. Yeah, does that kind of answer? Or...
Yeah, it was mostly a conversation rather than a direct question, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool hearing about the creative process on it, and it's so hard to actually like do this because it must be really tricky to not run into the bias, as you were saying, because color affects it just as much as how you choose to dress them up.
Yeah, it definitely does. And then it's whether those things are wrong or not. But with the original lineup, like, I'll find the slide again. Like, I do think it stood out, and as other people have said, and it wasn't our intent. And coming from, because you come at it from so many different angles, like a lot of the time I'm looking at like just the art and how I think it kind of looks visually and how it's balanced, and how the end product is there.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
color theory can just go on for like many books. It's like
yeah.
you were showing earlier, like how pink is associated as a feminine color,
Mm.
but at the same time, people are challenging that gender norm, right? So you have to decide, like, okay, are we allowed to use pink here? Because most players might associate it with feminine, but at the same time, you're like, well, it doesn't have to be feminine. It might just look nice here. You have to like choose some really complex choices with colors.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where like, if you don't, you'd then just not use pink, wouldn't you, or blue for that
Yeah, and then
matter
you're
as
just
well.
taking like a massive amount of like the color wheel away.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I think myself, like I'm partial to wearing pink and things there. I know it is quite a popular color. I teach 16 to 18-year-olds, and loads of people are wearing pink now. When I was at school, you wouldn't see as much of that. And I think that's where the kind of that's where this slide came from with kind of MGK, and it was almost like I guess a big, almost like, fuck you, hey, I'm doing this sort of thing. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there any more questions or conversation?
I have a question, but it's kind of going off the last conversation as well. I guess it kind of somewhat answered it for me. But just on the whole topic, like obviously color for representation of genders um and so on, and shapes and everything like you've just kind of went through. Whenever you're looking at like player customization, if you were to kind of like the last question almost humanize that, how would you find yourself like finding that line? I guess like you spoke about like where is the line, when is the time to have those conversations, if you should go back to redesign. Just talking from my own experience, we're currently obviously producing a game, and player customization is from the get-go. You start the game and you create your character and you unlock different customizations within different areas that you explore. And obviously there is other things like the lore of this world kind of comes into it, and a load of color palettes, like you were saying, color theory, and there's so much more. But I was just wondering, like for example, we had this conversation where, let's say you were unlocked a forest, and one of our designers were talking about everything they designed was all like these kind of more pants, trousers type thing, and it was just more under the logical thinking of that would make sense if you were hiking through a forest, that's what you would pick, sort of thing. But I just wanted I'm probably going off on a tangent or brain farting, but I just wanted to know, like, how did you find that line, I guess, that good balance of having like maybe feminine and masculine, but also items possibly for non-binary and so on?
Yeah, definitely. Like that's quite a big kind of area as well, and
Yeah.
I think, but like
Sorry.
it's a big area, but it's also, I guess, not in a way sort of thing. I think like I think the way we were looking at it was that our skins are choice, aren't they? We're giving the player choice. The player doesn't have to choose it, even if they unlock that skin. They do not ever have to play with that skin. As many other games, when you unlock, this, that, and the other, you're not going to use half of the things because you don't like those things. So I think giving the player choice, in a way, is kind of removing it from you because you're not forcing it on the player there. You're allowing them to choose what they want to wear and what they don't want to wear. I think Animal Crossing did this really well in is it New Horizons, the most recent one. I played it to death and then haven't played it for a year now or something. Because anything you get in that, you can anyone can equip anything. There's no like, hey, this is the boy stuff, this is the girl stuff here. It's just there, and if you want to use it, then you can use it. So I think that's good. And then you're almost gonna it'd be really interesting to see if there's whether you're going down pure percentages sort of thing. So for every one kind of feminine object, we're adding a masculine object there. But then almost that in itself is strange because you're then categorizing an item as feminine or masculine, which then goes almost back to the point of blue being for boys and pink being for girls, which is being kind of absurd there. So it's almost like it's a societal thing in a way, because it's the cultures that are there, and I guess society just keeps on evolving and changing and thinking about things, and that's kind of where this talk was, because it was getting people to think about stuff, and it's almost coming from a perspective where I was saying we got it wrong sort of thing there, and how we weren't expecting to it wasn't something that was completely going to be on our radar, and particularly when you've got lots of other stuff going on as well that you're thinking about, and all other aspects of development. So I think taking that almost step back and looking at it, and
I really loved the analogy you used at the beginning of the talk of like being in school and having that kind of dress up box that like everyone just wants the best thing. It's not a matter of whether it's for a certain gender at all. It's just everybody wants the nicest thing, that their favorite thing.
Yeah, absolutely. 'Cause, I mean, that was the perception in ours, and like, I mean, the purple waistcoat that I talked about with the flowery patterns on and stuff like that. I mean, you could say, hey, that's a girl waistcoat there because it's got flowers on. You know, like I'm not saying that's my opinion there of that, but somebody could, and that would be someone's perception of that. But then that's someone's perception. Someone else is going to have the flip side sort of thing. So, I mean, for us, it was almost like that. I don't know how to describe it, like because our class was almost like its own little society, I guess, and in our little society there, that was the most valuable thing. But you know, if you gave that to another class, maybe it was another thing, sort of thing there. So that was kind of how I saw it. Like skins, they were choice, so people could choose to do it. So you know, a girl that was playing this character could choose to have the kind of the suit character there, which you know, I think the biggest thing with that one is that it's got a mustache sort of thing, and like I love a cartoon comedy mustache there. But that you know, that would be a male thing there. But then taking a look at then drag queens, drag kings as well, almost a similar kind of thing. So what's to say that that isn't, you know, that's our dress up box there, that's not necessarily actual facial hair that character has grown there. So it's, yeah, it's again, I don't necessarily have the answers there, and I'm sure you know there'll be people in here that will have kind of opinions on that particular kind of character and the thoughts. It's how you look at it, and there probably is no one's going to have the right answer for that. But like from us thinking about it from a gameplay perspective, that would then be a choice, and you wouldn't be forced to have that. There's all different colors of this one as well. So I think there is a pink one as well. There's there's a Joker kind of looking one as well, and I think just some other random colors and things. So yeah, it's yeah.
No, thank you very much. It's super interesting just to even hear you talk about it and your thought process, like through designing it and stuff. And it is almost like whenever you're talking about the dress up box, and obviously, like whenever we go back to work tomorrow and we see the next round of designs, it's like always in the back of my head. Now I'm going to be thinking about that dress up box. I'm going to be thinking about challenging that unconscious bias and stuff like that. Rather than, I guess, worrying too much.
Yeah, I mean, if we didn't explore it, then we could have launched our game with this character here, and then it could have been a whole wider kind of issue and things. And you know, for us, there was enough people that I was talking to that could understand that point of view, and like I could understand that point of view as well. And as much as you know, I'd put time and effort into that particular design, it's then thinking about that. Yeah, like it's I think it's again with that unconscious bias, it's thinking about being more conscious about it, like, hey, let's think about this, like, how does this have this, does this not have that? And I guess it doesn't need to be a super lengthy process, but thinking about it would be important.
Thank you very much for your time tonight. Obviously everyone, but especially to Matt.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. It was super cool to kind of talk about this, and hopefully it makes people think, which was what I kind of wanted from it. Yeah, no right answers, but definitely thought needs to be put in.